Hello there, this is Christina coming to you live from the Big Island in Hawaii. I'm sending some aloha your way. I'm here visiting a dear friend that has a 7-acre farm that is absolutely stunning. So I'm in one of my favorite spots on a swing that overlooks the farm. And I think it's probably going to start to rain soon too. It's been very wet as of late. But I wanted to have this juicy conversation because I know for those of us who are women in business and who are stepping into their feminine power, this question comes up of, can you really run your business from the feminine? Because business is so inherently based on masculine values, right? Like, we often think that business is very much about being grounded and having a plan and strategy and achievement and success and bottom line and action plans and all sorts of things, which there's nothing wrong with that per se, but those are inherently masculine values. So if we're immersing ourselves in the feminine, then how do we run our businesses? Do we sit around and eat bonbons all day? Have a little chocolate that I could eat on camera? Feminine does delight in her chocolate and the sensual exploration of something delicious and sweet. Definitely feel a little turn on in doing that. Eating chocolate on camera. There you go, that's a first. So, back to the conversation. Does it mean if you run your business from the feminine that you're going to sit around and eat bonbons all day? No. No. And I understand that very often people think that this is true. You know, lots of my successful friends in the coaching industry will often be like, yeah, try running a business from your feminine, as if it's impossible. And I understand where that's coming from. It makes perfect sense because the feminine archetype is very much about eating chocolate and enjoying that, and pleasure and desire and radiance and beingness, and those aren't what you think are needed for a successful business generally. But here's what I discovered, because someone asked me this question recently, and as I was responding to her, something coalesced for me, because I feel like this whole work about becoming a pleasure CEO and using your feminine power in business I am still figuring it out. I'm the first one to admit I do not have it all figured out, nor do I think any one woman has this all figured out. And I keep saying we need to come together as a collective to really figure this out as a sisterhood and to open source this journey. So, can you run your business from your feminine? The answer is yes. But it's a tricky, there's a tricky aspect to this, and this is what I was realizing when I was responding to her. So if we look at it through the lens of our patriarchal conditioning, because let's be honest, all of us have had a patriarchal operating system installed straight into our hard drive. We don't even know it's there. It's constantly running in the background, and we don't understand how much it impacts us. It's like trying to explain water to a fish. Fish has no idea, right? We don't understand that we are running a patriarchal operating system based on masculine values, and not even the exalted masculine values, right? Really more based on competition and aggressiveness and sort of the lower forms of masculine archetype, right? So it's not serving us as women, it's not serving the men either, to be honest. But this is the operating system that's running us. So if we look through that lens, it's very much about duality and black versus white, or good versus bad. And so when we look through that lens, it's very split of you have your feminine and you have your masculine, and they're completely different, and they are totally separate. So that's the lens that most people are looking through the patriarchal lens of like, well, you need to get grounded, and you need to have your to-do list, and you need to have your 90-day strategy. If you're going to be successful in business, then you need to have all your business structures in place and your contracts and everything like that. That's the, let's say, the current world that we live in is how business is run. Now, I believe that there's a whole new paradigm that's wanting to come in. And what needs to happen, first of all, is that we unplug from this patriarchal operating system. And instead, we need to kickstart our feminine operating system, which is a whole journey unto itself, because to break free from the patriarchal operating system means breaking free from millenniums of conditioning in our culture, right? So that's a whole journey unto itself. But when you do, and the feminine operating system gets kickstarted, it's this interesting journey, because in the feminine operating system, it's not masculine versus feminine, nor is it only feminine. What I found is that everything kind of gets reorganized in a completely different way. And this is the rub and how to answer this question. And I got a heart. Thank you. I see some amazing ladies have joined in. Elaine and Janae and Tina. Welcome to you all. And yeah, if any of this is speaking to you, please chime in with your own thoughts, any questions, and or any hearts or thumbs up. I'm on my favorite spot on this big island where I'm on a little swing. And it's starting to softly rain outside, but thankfully I'm under a canopy, so we're good for now. All right, so back to this feminine operating system. It's this whole different way of operating. So the patriarchal operating system is very much horizontal and about being logical and linear. Now, the feminine operating system is completely different. It's vertical, it works on the spiral, and one could call it quantum. My friend Shelley Nelson was saying that, yes, it's very much about linear versus quantum, which is a whole different experience, as we all know from those of us who've been dabbling in quantum. Oh, I got some hearts. Thank you. Oh, Carol joined in. Welcome, Carol. Are you still in Mallorca? Are you joining in from there? That would be awesome. Okay, so that being said, in this feminine operating system that is operating on the spiral and is very quantum, it's a place where the masculine and feminine come together. Like the duality is left behind through the lens of the patriarchal operating system, and instead now we start to talk about divine union, where they're working together in this whole different way. So Carol says, hey girl, and she's back. Major good. Awesome. Welcome back from Mallorca. I can't wait to hear how that was for you. It sounded amazing. So, oh, it's starting to rain more. I don't know if you can hear it. It's beautiful. So all that being said, this feminine operating system operates completely differently. And it's a different lens to look through. So you're not looking through the patriarchal, in which case, no, you can't run your business from the feminine and sit around and eat bonbons all day. But if you're looking through the lens of the feminine operating system, then you can run your business from your feminine power, because your feminine power is very inclusive. It's about collaboration. It's working together. There's a place for the masculine and the feminine to work together in harmony, in divine union. And the basic answer that I got when I was answering my friend who asked about how to balance the masculine and feminine business was so interesting, because I was chiming away and answering and having these thoughts, and I thought, oh my God, I just coalesced something for myself. It's not that you need to get more into your masculine business. It's actually that you need to deepen into your feminine, into this whole other way of operating. And that was like, I could have had a V8 moment of like, oh shit, yeah, that's what it is. And so the trickiness is, if people looking through the patriarchal operating system, they're not going to totally get that. So, and I know it's interesting because there's a lot of people who are working on their feminine power, but maybe haven't created the success that they would like yet. And so that's a journey. So they may think, well, I'm good in my feminine, I am totally in my pleasure and desire, but I'm not getting the results I want in my business, so that must mean I need to deepen into my masculine. That makes perfect sense through the lens of the patriarchy. But at the same time, it always makes me cringe, because here's what I want you to understand. What's at the core of the feminine operating system is that you operate from your feminine power, and the core and base of your feminine power is your sex power, and that's in pussy. So the way that I'm helping my clients become a pleasure CEO is by really tapping into their pussy GPS, as I call it. This is our feminine power that is inside of us. And I got a heart. Woohoo! Thank you. So that being said, when you think about it, pussy is never going to tell you to get more into your masculine and to buckle down and to have a longer to-do list and to have more of a 90-day strategy. Oh, she is not. That's going to be drab pussy, my friends. That is not something that excites pussy and turns her on, which is the fuel of the feminine operating system, right? But pussy also is never going to guide you to sit around and eat bonbons all day. And that's the interesting piece that I think women are really missing, for the ones that are in their feminine but aren't having the success of business. So here's the thing. In regard to the feminine and pleasure and desire, there's a different ways that these operate. So you can have a surface level desire, which we could call compensatory desire, or you could have your deepest, darkest, like truest desires, right? So compensatory desires are very often that immediate, like, I want a cookie. Now, that's cool. If you want to give yourself that desire and be in your feminine, she's going to enjoy having that cookie, for sure. So give it to yourself. But at the same time, more than likely, that's not the deepest, truest desire. The deep desire, if you dug underneath that initial desire, would be that instead of that cookie, really you probably want some connection or some intimacy, or maybe you want a hug. But it's a lot easier to ask for the cookie as a desire than it is to be vulnerable and make an ask of someone for something, tender and sweet. So that means that the women who are afraid that they're going to sit around and eat bonbons all day in their business are really probably operating more from compensatory desire and maybe more from the avoidant feminine, right? Like the feminine that doesn't want to kind of go into the deep, dark intensity of truest emotions, sure, is going to distract herself by eating lots of chocolate. But the real answer is not to get more in your masculine. The real answer is to deepen more into your feminine. And from there, Pussy will guide you to the next steps. Pussy doesn't want you sitting on your ass all day. Pussy wants you definitely like having action and moving out into the world, but also not all action, right? Like she wants this harmonious balance of taking time to tune inward and then moving out into the world to take action, right? And it's sort of this beautiful figure eight that happens. So for anyone that's joining in, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. If you want to chime in, I know some of you know a lot about this work as well. Please do. I'd love for this to be a conversation because, as I said earlier, I think we need to open source this feminine operating system as a sisterhood, because no one woman has this all figured out. We're all trying to figure it out in our own little corners and feeling a little bit crazy most of the time. But instead, we could come together and open source this, and that's where I get really excited. I did a 3-day live event in early May in Northern California. That was amazing. And if you haven't seen that Facebook Live, I shared the results that I got from following Pussy to birth my live event, which was a total experiment. I wasn't totally sure I was going to get results because a lot of it was theoretical up until that moment, but I broke so many rules in the name of Pussy, and I did get quote-unquote results, which was super exciting. So you can watch that Facebook Live. And then the next step is I'm creating the 6-month program for women who want to take this work deeper, who are part of this storyline of really birthing and anchoring in this feminine operating system, because I know it's not all for me, and I know that I need all my sisters, and I'm going to create a container where we can do this together. Claudia says, this is brilliant, Christina. Thank you for this reframe. Oh, you're so welcome, sister. What stood out for you as being brilliant? I'd love to hear, because this is good feedback again. Like, I'm sharing data from the field, as I like to call it. You know, I'm out there doing what I can to figure out how to do business from the feminine. And so I'm sharing what I'm learning, but I really like to learn from everyone. And also, I want to hear, too, like, how it lands. Because hopefully there's potentially a book in the works around all this. And it's like, it's still such new material. It's all still landing. So I'm happy to have feedback. And let me just check my notes for a second, see if there was anything else I wanted to share around this piece, because I thought it was so interesting. Yes. Okay, cool. So I guess the one thing I just wanted to say is that, you know, when a woman is like, I need to get more into my masculine in order to create business success, to me, that feels so patriarchal to the core. That's talking from the patriarchal operating system. We've all internalized the patriarchy and have an inner patriarch inside of us that's given us a hard-ass time, and we're not doing enough, and we need to do it better, and comparing us to a million other people, and telling us that the feminine is bad and wrong. I mean, it's intense. We all I know I do. I'll speak for myself. I have a version of that inside of me, and that's this process as I've been dismantling patriarchal operating system has been so intense, because this inner patriarch has been giving me a hard time inside my head But slowly, I'm really learning to land the feminine operating system, and that voice is getting louder than my inner patriarch. And that's why I'm excited for this 6-month program, because I know we will all each deepen so much. And it's like, it's so easy. Many of us are doing the work of the feminine, which is awesome. We all need to be doing that. But I don't know if you found this. Like, I'll spend like a weekend with, sister goddesses and so deep in my feminine and joy and pleasure and delight. And then the second I leave and I go home, I'm back to like old habits of getting into man mode in business. It's hard to hang on to the feminine operating system. So I feel like we need to kind of keep landing this and anchoring it into the grid, if you will, so that at some point there starts to become a tipping point. And then the feminine operating system becomes the hashtag new norm, right? Like, we don't have to hold it in our systems one by one. We're holding it as a collective, and then we can all lean into that sisterhood to hold us as we anchor this in. Does that make sense? I sometimes feel like, oh my God, I'm talking pretty woo-woo. But hey, that's my native language, so I'll continue to do that. Does anyone have any questions? There's so much more to say about this, but the prevailing wisdom... Oh, Karen says, do you have any tricks when you catch yourself slipping into the masculine? Yes! Fabulous question. So, the first piece to do is to notice it, right? I mean, that's the most important piece, is to catch yourself when you are in the masculine and when it doesn't feel good, and when you catch yourself pushing and when there isn't any flow and you're like making things happen, right? So, I hung out with a copywriter on the Big Island when I was here last time a few months ago, and she gave me this great analogy, Ashley Welton, and she said, it's kind of like you can push the car up the hill, or you can get in the car and you can drive it. And I was like, fuck yeah, that's what I want. I'm tired of pushing that car up the hill. So if we're in our man mode, generally we're pushing the car up the hill. So number 1 step is to notice that it's happening. Number 2 step is pattern interrupt. Stop what you're doing. Like, it's really hard to kind of sort of like, I'll just do it a little differently, but I'll keep doing what I was doing. No. Pattern interrupt is the name of the game at this point. So like, shut the computer down, step away, get into your body. This is a perfect place to bring in what I would call a pleasure pause. What could you do to bring in some pleasure and get you out of man mode and get you into your body and reminded of your feminine? So some specific ways you could do that. You could do a dance party. I've got some great playlists on Spotify if you ever want to check those out, are on Turn On, and also like dance breaks and things like that. So dance break is perfect. That just cuts the mode that you were in, gets you into your body, brings in some joy, shakes it all up, and then you'll come back differently. Another thing you could do is meditate, like really pause and tune in. Another thing you could do is stroke pussy for 1 minute, something super simple, but a way to kind of get connected to yourself and to pleasure. You could walk away, go for a quick walk, do some yoga poses. I mean, there's a million different things that you could do, but the name of the game is to step away from it. And I think the more we keep breaking the pattern and stepping away and repatterning our system, the more it will become the new norm to not get too deep into man mode. Okay, wait a minute. I'm missing a question here. I hope that helped, Karen. So Claudia says, I've been feeling like the question of feminine versus masculine is a very patriarchal approach to this question. Yes, I love that you're talking about divine union. Perhaps it's not about action versus non-action. Is there more? And Janae says, going deeper into the feminine well. Yes, into the feminine well. Pleasure pause. It is so delicious. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it almost kind of breaks my heart a little bit that this is so abnormal for all of us, that we have to like teach each other these things and remind each other. I mean, it's like our natural state. I could start to cry. It makes me sad. But at the same time, whatever. We chose to be here on the planet at this time, and we're definitely making some headway of landing this new way. And let's keep reminding ourselves about all of this. So, all that being said, yes, we're going deeper into the feminine well. And that, I'll tell you what, can be terrifying. I mean, that's why people default to the avoidant feminine or the compensatory desires that we talked about earlier, thinking that you are going to sit around and eat bonbons all day. No, like, pussy is going to guide you to, number one, stay connected to your practices, you know, and your practices are going to create a container for you as you're building your business. Now, there's so much more to say around how the feminine and masculine interact in the feminine operating system. It's a longish conversation, but maybe I'll throw it in here since I've got some I got some live ones on the Facebook Live with me today. So here's what I want to say. When I was landing the Pleasure CEO 5-step feminine-powered operating system a couple of years ago, I discovered something fascinating because I was wondering, how do the feminine and masculine work together in business? Because I wasn't entirely sure. I mean, again, it just cracks me up that we have no idea how to do this. We only know we're so one-sided. We know the patriarchal way, and that's it. Anyway, I digress. So back to what I discovered was that in the way that the feminine and masculine work together in divine union, in the feminine operating system that works on the spiral and is quantum versus horizontal and linear, is that it all starts with the feminine. She needs to have that spark of desire that rises up from her soul and sends her in the direction of the nutrient that she needs. Desires are holy. They come from our souls. And so what's tricky in our culture is so often women don't allow their desires. You know, we've squashed them for so many reasons. One, because we think we can't have them, so what's the point? Or we think we don't deserve them, or we think they're selfish. There's so many reasons, and this is a really core aspect of becoming a pleasure CEO, is you have to open up your desire channel, or else we're dead in the water. It's just like foundational. It's like the fuel of orgasm and of our businesses as a pleasure CEO. So it all starts with desire. So if we take the time as women to listen to the desires as they rise up, and then ideally we fan the flames of those desires. And we can do that by imagining how the desire feels and getting into the specificity of the desire, like what would this desire exactly look like? And as we do that, we're feeding the desire, and it starts to almost become like it pulsates and it starts to take on form. And when that desire is so juicy, guess what happens? The masculine archetype is like, my woman wants something. That desire is hot, and I want to be of service. So I'm going to come up with a plan and a strategy to make it so. And then our masculine becomes awakened and gets into his exalted state, and this is happening inside of us, right? Could happen outside of us, but I'm talking about our own inner masculine. And then that inner masculine comes in to help create the container and the structure to make it so. I love the analogy of a river with riverbanks to explain the masculine and feminine. You know, the river is wild and a force of nature, but if it had no banks, it would just sort of seep out into the dirt and be nothing. But when the riverbanks come in, which are the masculine archetype, now there's something happening between the two, right? So they really work together well. And of course, if you had the riverbanks without the water, the river, then nothing's happening either. So you start to see how they beautifully work together. So in this analogy, your desire is the river, right? So, and you're feeding that desire, and it gets juicy, and then the masculine wakes up. The masculine wants to be of service so badly and wants to create a plan for us to have what we want. But here's the problem. This is what I've noticed that I think is fascinating and humbling for us ladies. We women aren't giving ourselves time and or permission to allow the desires to come forward. So we sort of have like a little bit of a want and a need, and then we're like, you need to give that to me, masculine. And masculine's like, I feel henpicked, and no one's really appreciating me, and you're never happy with what I give you, and you need to be pulling your own weight. And then this like squabbling happens between the masculine and feminine, and it's just a mess. Masculine doesn't feel appreciated, feminine is cranky because she's not getting what she wants, and it's just a big old mess. But what changes this whole storyline? It's the feminine allowing more of her desires. Done. We could shift the entire planet, my friends, if we let our desires pulsate through more. That's almost it. And that's also what helps in this feminine operating system of how they work together in this beautiful way. So it's not like feminine needs to do her thing over here, and then masculine needs to do his thing over here. And that's that duality we talked about, the patriarchal operating system through that lens. No. Instead, through the feminine lens, it's like feminine is enjoying herself, she's in her feminine, and then that naturally calls forward the masculine, and then they begin to work together and everybody is fed. Do you see that? Like, it's amazing that it's taken me this long to figure that out. But anyway, here we are. So all that being said, that's an important part of the process of how they work together in that feminine operating system. So to finish up, if there's any other questions, let me know. If anyone wants to chime in with their own wisdom, please do. What data from the field do you have as you've been exploring the feminine in from business? So the answer to the question is, if I allow myself to immerse in the feminine, will I sit around and eat bonbons all day? And the answer is no. If you deepen into your feminine power and you go deep, you go down to get the penny at the bottom of the pool. We're not talking about surface level. The feminine is so deep, right? So it's more about diving into her and then learning this whole new language and this whole new operating system and this whole new lens to look through. And then you can run your business like a pleasure CEO. Make sense? Okay, cool. So, oh, hang on. Swipe left to reveal comments. I didn't mean to do that. There they are. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to finish up here unless anyone else wants to chime in or ask any other questions. Thank you for joining me today. It's been such a delight. And I will share the link if anyone feels called. Do you want to do this work, like, with me? Do you want to be in this container that I'm going to set up? It's going to be 6 months of, like, diving deep into this and, like, working the muscles of this feminine operating system so that it starts to land and become the new norm. I don't think we can do it by ourselves, to be honest. You know, like, my deepest intention, this isn't my program. This is the program of the goddess, and I have to keep getting myself out of the way. There's moments when I feel a little attached, and I just have to hand it back up, because I'm just doing my job to create the container for this and to share what I've been learning and to create space for all of us to share what we've been learning with each other. So you can find out more at pleasureceopriestess.com if you would like. We're diving in July. It's coming up soon. There's going to be a lot of in-person time because I think there's a lot to learn in person, in sisterhood. This isn't some silly online program at all. This is deep work, right? So I want to create a temple of high priestesses of pleasure CEOs where we do this as one. So I'll put the link somewhere in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure, and I send you all lots of love and aloha from the Big Island. Take care.